Welcome everyone to the latest edition of Talking Data with Joel and Mike, where we really dig into the deep conversations around leadership and particularly around with the data foundation lens for our purpose-led sector. And today we're going to actually explore the topic of donor trust in the age of rapid technology. So a bit of a dichotomy there of those two elements for a lot of people. We're very lucky to have two special guests from WWF. So I'd like to welcome Rachael Lance, who's the head of supporter mobilisation. Welcome, Rachael.
Thanks, Joel. Lovely to be here with you and Mike.
Yeah, and also like to welcome Thomas Clark, who's the head of Lifecycle Performance and Insight, if I've got that correct, from WWF.
Thank you very much, Joel. Great to be here.
Thomas. And obviously welcome my co-host, Michael Mocatta, who's been on this journey for quite a number of episodes now. So it's exciting to have you back as well, Mike.
Yes, of course. And welcome to our guests. Good that you could join us today.
Thank you.
So diving into this dichotomy of a topic, going to start with the first sort of question to probably both Rachael and Thomas, and that is, in your minds, why has donor trust suddenly become such a live issue right now?
Look, I think donor trust has always been an issue. It really, trust is the currency that charities have always operated on. But I think what has changed more recently is that almost every kind of supporter interaction now involves technology somewhere in that journey. So we're asking people to share more data and engage across digital channels and, increasingly interact with both digital, but now also AI-enabled experiences. So I feel like that's definitely heightened the perception around trust. I might throw to Tom.
Yeah, I think maybe to add on that a little bit, at the same time as trust has always been there, I think Australians every day are seeing, unfortunately, more and more data breaches in the news day by day, and it's a often conversation around the dinner table. So the pace of technology is moving so fast, and there's so much concern happening around the space that often governance frameworks and how we're protecting data is catching up. We're playing a little bit of catch up. So I think organizations that will thrive and continue to be those trusted organizations to Australians and supporters, I think will be the ones that are then able to still innovate and grow, but are able to keep that trust and protect data and trying to walk that fine line between the two.
Yeah, I see, Thomas, part of your role is around doing this sort of cyber resilience and governance pieces for WWF. And
yeah.
So we'd love to dig into part of that of our conversation today, because part of what we're also seeing is that by not just seeing it as a checkbox activity, it actually doing a proper certified approach to it all, it becomes a real trust asset, arguably, for the organization.
It is, and it's probably an adage that bores everyone to death when you do it in your cybersecurity training, but it's true. Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility in an organization. And I think for us, we are all supporters of our cause. Like when I come up to work to WWF every day, I'm excited for the impact we're making. And so we all really want to enable our supporters to get as close to the impact and make as much of an impact as possible. So I think when we then look at the data, how do you, as a staff member, look at that not just as ones and zeros, but you're looking at data that you're safeguarding as a person and it's as a supporter, and then taking that really to a special place, because we do have, I think, it's a privilege, but also, a big responsibility to safeguard this data. And yeah, where we see in the organization, Rachael and I work really closely together from how we fundraise, but then also how we build experiences. And it's about making the right decision. Sometimes there's trade-offs. You don't get to do some of the fundraising things you want to do because we make a decision to how we work with supporters, and that way.
Yeah.
And one of the
Yeah.
challenges we're sort of seeing in this particular space is getting back to the technology aspect is, the likes of Google and Apple and all those technology providers putting in those protection layers for their customers, right, which actually inhibits organisations being able to communicate. So if we look at telemarketing and phones now, the phone is basically telling you potentially who's ringing you. And if you don't know, like a lot of the charities are using call centres, and so therefore there's this cycling of phone numbers. And because the individual will go, well, I don't know who's ringing me, it's just so easy for them to screen out potential callers. And then you've got the email boxes who, if you haven't opened an email a certain number of times, automatically putting it into spam or various areas. So there's all these barriers that are sort of being put in front of organisations to get through to maintain trust, let alone establish trust. And that's becoming more and more of a challenge in the current technology space.
Mm.
What sort of things are you sort of trying to do to potentially mitigate or get around those sort of challenges?
It's a good question. I can take a bit of a stab, and then Rach, I'd love you to please add on
Well,
as well.
Given Rachel's title is supporter mobilisation,
Yeah,
she's like,
is the pro at mobilizing.
yeah.
Why don't you kick off, Rach?
No, sorry.
No, you go, Tom, and then I'll jump in.
Well, I think it's a good, because there's also, even within that, Mike, I think there's, Google and some of the web services, as you mentioned, putting in a lot of protection for people. And I'm a consumer, right? We're all consumers. So I love the fact that when I get a spam call, my phone doesn't send it to me immediately, or, when I get emails, it's being farmed out. So I think it's looking at it overall as what is that experience for the supporter, and then how do we work within that? And, for us, we've spent a lot of time looking at how do we build those genuine relationships with supporters, and it's no longer really us just sending you information that we want you to hear. It's, how do we make it really authentic, really genuine? So when we do have those interactions, whether it is through voice, whether it's through EDM, whatever channel it is, it's a conversation that supporters are excited to have. And it's one that is really genuine. So I think we've spent a lot of time on that space. Obviously, tech is a component, but I think actually a lot of the problems to solve in that world also do sit outside tech. But Rach, what did you want to add on there?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would add to that just particularly around the channel-specific mechanics. With email, hopefully we're designing better email experiences so that people are opening and engaging with our emails, and therefore we're hopefully breaking through some more of those spam filters, and that's something that we are working quite a lot on. But then with the telemarketing example, it's very easy to ignore calls. So some of the things that we're then doing is looking at, well, how do you give people a heads up? So maybe it's sending an SMS from a trusted phone number that is branded as WWF that says, hey, we're trying to get in touch with you about this thing. And so then if the phone rings, it gives people a little bit more certainty and trust rather than who is this unknown number. So I think there are definitely ways to do it, but it is, as you said, becoming far more harder than it was certainly when I started working in fundraising many, many moons ago.
Yeah, one of the techniques I've seen with some charities is that they're deliberately making sure that they're mentioning the charity as quickly as possible in terms of that communication and then who's calling, sort of thing. It's like, this is, WWF, it's Mary or whatever it is. And that way the recipient has a better understanding as to who it is, and then can quite easily decide whether they're going to pick up or not. In fact, I picked up a call last night, ended up donating to a charity simply because they were able to sort of communicate relatively quickly up front. Otherwise, if you don't know who it is, you're just automatically letting it go to the wicket keeper, as I would refer to it.
Yeah, and I think, oh, sorry, you go,
No,
Tom.
you go, Rach.
I was going to say, I think there's an element about helping supporters manage those expectations and letting them know, like in our onboarding journey, we tell people, here's what to expect from us. Here's when you can hear from us. And so that they can, those sorts of things are things that can help establish trust, along with letting them know where you're calling from straight away and some of those things when you do actually get through on the phone. But so I think there's a lot of little things that charities can do to help overcome some of these tech challenges, but also to help provide a little bit more ease around these experiences that people are going through.
Yeah.
I think
What about
what I was just going to add quickly.
Sorry, go ahead, Thomas.
Oh, it was just, I think it's a moving feast that we're just going to have to keep evolving to as well. I think AI is an interesting one in this discussion as well, that we're all starting to probably have inboxes sorted by AI, whether it's in Gmail, that Gemini is starting to do work, or in other software. How long will it be until all mobile phones are answered first by an AI agent that's in your smartphone? So I think it's going to be something that a lot of traditional mechanisms that we've used to build this trust and get attention are going to need to continue to evolve. And I think staying on the pulse in this is going to be so vitally important for, I think, all charities of all sizes. Otherwise, I think we might all quickly fall behind or get caught out as this new tech starts to come in.
Yes, that's right. I think you're right. You've touched on a couple of things there, actually, which, I think we're probably talking about 6 months, 6 to 8 months before that sort of technology is well and truly adopted, where, yes, you're right, AI will answer the call. And then depending on let's say the owner of that device may be instructing its AI, unsubscribe me from this, or opt me out of this channel or whatever. And whereas before, people would have to go to that effort to do the opt-out process. Now I think we'll probably be moving into a realm where the devices will be able to automatically opt out their recipients if they've instructed them to do so, right?
But I think Thomas, you also raised another point is if keeping on top of things or ahead of things, it's going to only put more pressure on this emergence of more governance and change management, because keeping your team aligned will be a bigger challenge than ever as things move faster or change faster. But maybe flipping it on to the opposite side of things. So in your experiences, where do you think like donor trust actually breaks? And sometimes often it happens without the organization even noticing that it's broken. They're just like silent non-supporters all of a sudden.
Yeah, look, I think most people think that trust breaks down when there's, big controversies or major events that happen to organization. But I think often trust is actually broken in much smaller ways. So not reporting back on impact is one of the most basic ways that charities lose trust with their supporters. But then I think there's also a lot that relate to data and the relationship and the experience that you provide people. A lot of the times these moments happen when we're trying to be personal and give people a great experience, but perhaps we don't quite have the underlying data processes and systems quite right. So, for example, if a supporter reactivates after being lapsed and then gets treated like a brand new donor, saying, welcome, thanks for joining us, or, you congratulate a donor on their anniversary message, but then perhaps we've got duplicate records and you've not captured their full history of giving. Those are the things that really make a donor feel like we don't know them, we don't understand them, and they instantly lose that trust. So I think they're the sorts of things that can really lose trust with people. You know, and another example is where different parts of the organization are all communicating with the same supporter, but they're talking about their specific programs with their voice. And from a donor's perspective, we're one organization. They don't know that there's maybe 50 people behind the scenes, all having different objectives and different goals. And every interaction makes sense from our point of view for that team or that program. But sometimes that can then feel really confusing for a supporter because they're being pulled in a million different directions and not having that clarity. So it's very easy, you know, as Tom sort of mentioned before, it's very easy to talk about them as ones and zeros and numbers and cohorts, but we really do try to make sure we're always bringing that human point of view in. And we really do take that seriously in our decision making and thinking about these as real people and real supporters who are contributing to real money and real impact.
Mm.
Yeah, it's pretty important. We've come across a number of other examples that you sort of alluded to, where you're right. I think it's when a charity communicates back to the donor and incorrectly shares, as you say, an anniversary or how much they've raised or how much money they've donated, or they've asked for their annual contribution receipt and it's only half there and all that sort of stuff. And it's those sort of things that sort of make the donor think, oh well, you don't actually know me. What am I? And so there's definitely that expectation that. And I think it's whether it's a consumer communicating to an organisation like a financial institution or a charity, the expectation is that you know me, right, and you should know everything about me. And if you don't, then there's that sort of that does have a huge impact.
Yes, maybe it leads to a question. Maybe this for Thomas, because it's very easy, as Rachael mentioned, to point to data issues as the reason why things maybe failed or broken down because there's missing pieces or inaccuracies or so forth. But do you, in your experience, is it more the people and processes that given your sort of governance sort of background, do you see that's actually the bigger factor even that's creating these issues?
Look, I think that's a mixture, right? I think there's always a range of factors that are in play when we look at constructing, I think, any experience that we give our supporters. Data's one element. It's a very important element. I don't think we can probably understate that, but it still is only one of a holistic number. I think having the right systems, the right capability in a team, the right kind of culture of approaching as well. And then I think obviously the supports and the processes around that all have a massive contributing factor. One thing I was reflecting on was I had a very similar experience to what Rach was saying. I think my birthday's in the beginning of the year. I had an organization I supported in the past wish me a happy birthday in November. A nice, 9 months after my actual birthday. But then I was like, well, why are they doing this? And I went back to have a look, and it's actually I gave them the wrong birthday.
Right.
And
Deliberately,
so,
probably for
well,
identity purposes and protection.
well, that's the thing, right? And it made me think, like, why did I do that? So it was years ago, did I trust the organization enough to give them all of my data in that way? Why did I do that? Because data that's inaccurate can be because of many reasons. And I think one of those is when a supporter does give you its data, that's a lot of trust a supporter is giving us. And so how do we build that in a way so over time, we know third-party data is becoming a lot more inaccurate and it's becoming data that we're also trying to stay away from in more general. So how do we build that together? But still also, I think those are the contributing factors. It's about working with our team. So, we're looking at what is the right processes to follow, building capability, building that culture of viewing supporters for who they are. And as Rach said, really taking that human-led approach, I think solves a lot of these issues as well.
One of the challenges that we're sort of seeing in the industry is the lack of investment around education and teams that manage the underlying data to create that, complete view and maintenance of it, because, name and address information, donor information deteriorates, quite rapidly over a period of time. People move, people die. And there's a whole heap of other mitigating factors around that. But what we've sort of seen is that some organisations are making the right investment choices, but others aren't necessarily putting the investment into that and sort of expect it just to magically happen. It's one of those areas that I think a lot of organisations struggle with.
Yeah, well, maybe related to that is, do you think that there's a view that like technology has a sort of default in depersonalizing fundraising to a degree, like it's kind of working against you sometimes, or is that a bit of a myth, and actually you find it's a real opportunity to personalize and build trust?
What do you reckon, Rach?
Well, I would say that you could argue for both sides in that, and I think elements of it definitely can depersonalize. With the examples we were talking before, you might have to speak to an AI agent before you can get through to someone on the phone, or you've got these blockers in place so that it can actually prohibit some of that relationship, but it can also really enhance it. Like the level of personalization you could offer someone by, if you do experience as well and you have good data that sits underneath everything, then technology can absolutely be an amazing asset. But I think you've got to use it well, and you've got to earn your trust and earn your place in that supporter's life and in their inbox, or however you're connecting with them.
Yeah, I think to me, technology is very much, I think, is a tool, right? And I always come back to, at the end of the day, we want to build that relationship. We want to grow and develop with our supporters, regardless of how they want to support us, whether that's through a petition, whether that's through supporting them with their time, or through funds. And good technology just helps you build those relationships at scale, rather than at the old school one-to-one communication. So I think it's about making the right investment and smart investments in tech. I've definitely come across many teams and colleagues in different organizations, both in the for-profit and the non-profit worlds, that, think that if I get X solution in, that will deliver everything for me, but without having the right culture in there, the right vision and the right aspiration, tech obviously just falls flat and can be as much of a restriction as a positive.
What does that practically look like for you guys at WWF, in terms of, like, you talk about like keeping on top or ahead of technology and the data to really build these relationships? Is it like, have you got these like working groups or steering committees, or really specific teams of people that are constantly looking at this, or how does it work with you guys?
I can probably speak a little bit on it
without revealing too many of your inner secrets.
Oh, sure. Our prized, protected secrets. So in my role, I'm fortunate. I sit across three probably quite discrete areas. So I lead our teams responsible for our CRM, our data architecture, our insights programs, but then also our supporter experience program. So our customer marketing program and a lot of that supporter experience design. So we're able, even from a day-to-day perspective, keep that, what we're doing in a CRM and our relationships with supporters very, very close and incredibly collaborative with then the team that's responsible for those communications to our supporters, for how we strategize and plan to expand and improve those experiences. So I think there is a great deal in that co-location and working together. Obviously then, as Rach mentioned, we work really closely together in what we call the experience team, and that's a big focus for us. Maybe, Rach, you can touch on that a bit more as well.
Yeah, so I guess what is traditionally known as the marketing, fundraising and data all-encompassing team, we call the experience team, which is very much a deliberate decision because it really wanted every decision to start with the supporter and their experience of us. And so it really is bringing that to the fore. It is embedded into everybody's role. Obviously, we've got Tom and his team really leading on a lot of that, but it is so important across. Everyone has a responsibility around data hygiene, trust, all of those things. I think the other thing you mentioned, do we have committees? We do have a tech and data stewardship committee that both Tom and myself sit on, but also people from across the whole organisation have representation on that. And that is also really helpful for us to make sure that cybersecurity, privacy, data governance, all of those things are really top of mind. The executive team sit on that committee as well. And so it really is kind of from the top down, a really strong focus across the organisation.
Yeah. Well, maybe relating to that is like, and conscious, we'll wrap up over a couple more questions and conversations. Is that like, how do you sort of see the Australian like privacy environment really shaping how you go about building your experiences essentially? Like what are the effects or guiding pieces that you're seeing there?
Yeah, we're very mindful. Obviously, there's been a number of changes that have come in and are still to come into effect with changes to the Privacy Act. So we're always keeping really close to that and talking with other charities with how they're going to react to that regulatory landscape changing. Obviously, we view that very much as that's a baseline, not necessarily the end goal. We very much, I think, have high standards of ourselves of how we want to safeguard and protect that donor data. So as Rach mentioned, we, I think from an entire team perspective, are always asking ourselves, not just, hey, what more data can we collect and let's get everything that we can. It's more so, what is a genuine need? And, what do also supporters genuinely expect us to be using, and really trying to be a supporter-centric first in that conversation. So I think it's easy to lend too far perhaps in one direction, but if we start with why are we collecting data, what's the genuine need, what's the supporter expectation, held us in kind of good stead. But it's a moving feast. Everything is changing so much in this world, and tech solutions to do it, and AI is again this one area that's putting pressure in privacy. And from a governance perspective, we're asking ourselves a lot of questions and working through that as an organization. And I presume we'll continue to do that, and all these other charities will keep doing that, I think, for the months and years to come.
Yeah, but it's kind of almost like what Mike and I are seeing more of is like privacy was obviously a core like focus for a lot of causes in recent years, but it's really emerging into like coming back to fundamental like cyber resilience is just as or even more important. In fact, it's probably more on the radar of boards and execs. And then obviously what's emerging is more this AI governance piece, which is so they're all inter or overlapping and important. So to wrap up today's podcast and to bring us back to sort of like our topic of like donor trust in the age of rapid technology. What would you use for a leader in our audience today that's part way down this journey? What would you see as like something that you would suggest as a key step for them to take or something to avoid?
So I would say the first thing I would do is to encourage supporter listening. I think really understand those pain points that supporters have and how you can then aim to solve that and improve their experience. So much of what we have done as an organisation has been built around understanding what our supporters are saying and what they need. And then I think I would add to put the supporter at the heart of decisions. So in fundraising, there is always an extra ask that we can do, or another opportunity, or something we want to put in front of someone. And that person can extend the reach of your campaign, but we really need to make sure we're considering that cumulative supporter experience and making sure that whatever ask we do put in front of someone is the right ask for the right person at the right time. And so sometimes that right decision to improve and balance your long-term trust doesn't necessarily always maximize short-term income. So I would really just encourage people to be thinking about what's best for the supporter, not always what's best for us or what's best for this particular program.
And I think I was going to add from my side, I think from a tech point of view, you know, in today's world, we're seeing such an explosion of available tech platforms and AI-enabled MarTech that I think we've almost got too much choice of tech and platforms today, which is making, I think, everyone's jobs a little bit harder to choose, well, what's the right path when there's an unlimited almost number of paths to go down. So I think a good first step is to keep in mind the adage of the Ferrari conundrum a little bit in the world of MarTech, that if you buy a Ferrari but you're driving it like a Yaris, what was the point of it in the first place? And just really being focused on what do you really need, focus on the supporter, focus on your use cases, what you need to do, but not underestimating the need to continue to invest in your teams, in your team's capability, in your team's capacity, in their foundations. Otherwise, there's always a trap of just trying to follow every new tech trend without really getting that supporter outcome and leaving your teams behind, which you have to be mindful of.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's brilliant. Completely agree with a lot of everything said tonight. I know, Mike, if you had any parting thoughts as well, but yeah, really.
Well,
yep.
I think Rachael and Thomas have covered it pretty well. I mean, one of Thomas's earlier statements around making sure that organisations treat people as humans. That there's the donor is a person, and the information associated with that an organisation holds is valuable, and it's a part of the overall trust. And the other thing too is, from the work that we're doing in this particular space, I think it's important for organisations to invest in their teams in terms of people, and work on continually to establish that human connection that charities have with their donors, and not rely on technology to actually solve that problem. As Rachael says, that it can be a way to enhance that relationship, but it shouldn't be the sole thing in terms of reliance, because the danger, I think, in the coming few years is that there will be the temptation to move towards technology replacing people, and I think that would be a huge mistake in the not-for-profit sector, because it's all about relationships. So yeah.
Yep. No, well, that's fantastic. So we'll wrap up our podcast here. I feel like we've covered a rich tapestry of ideas and areas tonight. It's fantastic sharing for Rachael and Thomas and Mike. Thank you very much. So we'll say good night to our audience, and and thanks once again, and look forward to our next editions of Talking Data with Joel and Mike, and say good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.